Be me 34 software engineer at a mid-sized tech company, not some startup with ping pong tables and cold brew on tap. Just a regular company that makes software for logistics firms remote 3 days a week. Office the other two, nothing dramatic about my life at this point. Decent apartment on the third floor of a building that smells faintly like other people's cooking at all times. Decent salary, decent routine, decent gym. 2 blocks away that I actually use. I've been here for about 3 years, moved to this city for the job, built a life slowly the way you do. When you don't know anyone, it's not a lonely life, but it's a pretty self-contained one. I have a few good friends. I see them regularly. I am fine. I am specifically fine in the way that people who are fine don't think about much. I meet her at a mutual friend's birthday dinner, not a party, just a dinner. Maybe 12 people at someone's apartment. She's at the far end of the table when I get there, and she's already deep in a conversation with 2 people. I don't know. Talking with her hands, leaning forward, clearly the loudest person in the room in a way that doesn't feel aggressive, just full of energy. By the end of the night, the seating has rearranged itself the way it does, and she ends up next to me. We talk for maybe 3 hours. Everyone else cycles in and out of the conversation, but mostly it's just us. She has opinions about everything, and she's good at defending them without being exhausting about it. She works at a non-profit doing communications and outreach, runs a blog on the side about women in the workplace and relationship dynamics, tells me up front that her content is not really aimed at guys like me. Laughs when she says it. I say, I appreciate the warning. We exchange numbers before the night ends. She texts me the next afternoon, something short and direct. No games about waiting the right amount of time. We get coffee that week, then dinner the following week. Then it becomes a regular thing. She's easy to be around in the specific way that matters. She pushes back when she disagrees. Instead of going silent and being weird about it later, she remembers what I tell her and follows up on it. The next time we talk, she's funny without trying to perform. Being funny, I've dated people before who were fine, but with whom I always felt slightly on edge in ways I couldn't explain with her. I don't feel that, at least not at first 6 months in, and I'm fairly certain she's someone I want to keep around long term, a year in, and it's just obvious. The way some things are obvious, without needing to be examined another year and we're talking about moving in together. She brings up marriage before I do. I was getting there, but she gets there first. And it surprises me without bothering me. I buy a ring. She'd mentioned at some point that she has feelings about the diamond industry, labor conditions, supply chain, the whole thing. I buy a sapphire. She loves it. We get engaged. The people in our lives are happy for us. Planning the wedding takes longer than expected and involves more opinions from other people than I anticipated. She handles most of it because she has clearer ideas about what she wants, and I genuinely don't care that much about venue materials. Small wedding. Her preference may be 40 people. A space that used to be some kind of warehouse that's been converted into an event room, exposed brick, low lighting. No flowers. She didn't specifically approve. She wants us to write our own vows. I work on mine for a while. They're not poetry, but they're honest. I talk about showing up, about choosing her every day, about being worth trusting. Her vows are more conceptual. She talks about partnership without possession, about love that doesn't require one person to surrender their autonomy to the other. Her friends cry. My friends look politely attentive. My mom pulls me aside before we leave the venue and says, quietly, that she thought the vows were a little formal. I say it's just her style. My mom nods in the way. She nods when she's accepting something she doesn't fully agree with. First year of marriage is genuinely okay. Not a honeymoon phase exactly, because neither of us is that kind of person, but functional and warm. We work well as a domestic unit. Chores split roughly evenly. We cook on a loose rotation. Bills handled without drama. She makes less than me, but we never make it a power thing. I put extra into the joint account each month without announcing it. She notices once, thanks me once. We don't discuss it further, and that feels right. The blog keeps growing in the background. She's posting regularly, building an audience, getting invited to panels and community events. Small things first, a round table at a local library, a podcast appearance, a guest column somewhere, then slightly larger things. She gets a co-hosting spot on a podcast that runs for about 6 months before the production folds. She's genuinely excited about all of it, and I'm happy for her. I'm not the kind of person who needs to be the center of attention in a relationship. I like that she has her own world, but something starts shifting, and it happens slowly enough that I don't clock it for a while. The blog shapes the way she processes everything, not just the big political stuff. The daily texture of living a male coworker talks over her in a meeting, and she comes home and processes it for 2 evenings. Which is fine. I can listen. I ask what happened, but I learn quickly that asking clarifying questions or offering alternative readings of a situation gets coded as not believing her. So I stop offering other angles and just listen. She starts narrating small things through a lens that makes everything evidence of something larger. A cashier at the grocery store is curt with her, and that becomes a data point. A car cuts her off, and somehow that gets connected back to a broader pattern. I sit through these conversations, and I say the right things at the right times. I'm not resentful about it. I'm just present. But I notice that my role in these conversations is to validate. Never to question. Any question gets interpreted as undermining. So I stop questioning, and after a while I stop really talking much. At all, we coexist well. But something that used to be a conversation has become more like a briefing. I think she notices too, but neither of us names it. The conversations get longer. She starts a new series on the blog about deconstructing traditional relationship labels. I read the first one. It's well argued in places. She's a clear writer. She makes some points I actually think are fair. But there is a quality to the logic that I notice even then. Like, she built the conclusion first and then constructed the argument to reach it. The argument is airtight on its own terms, but the terms were chosen specifically to make it airtight. I close the tab and don't say any of this one evening. Nothing special. I think we're having pasta. She has her phone on the table, which she doesn't usually do at meals. She's been carrying something around all day. I can tell she has a specific way of holding a conversation she wants to have. She keeps it close, while she decides when to open it. She tells me she's been thinking about the word wife. She says it has centuries of implication packed into 2 letters, talks about how historically it described a legal status that mapped directly onto dependency and ownership. Says, every time I introduce her as my wife to someone, it's reinforcing a framework she no longer identifies with. She would like me to call her my partner instead. She's calm about it, direct. No ultimatum in her voice, just a clear request. I put my fork down, I look at her. She looks back. I say, okay. She blinks. She asks if I actually understand what she's asking. I say, yes, partner. I got it. It makes sense she waits for something more from me. Some pushback or discussion. I pick my fork up and keep eating. She recalibrates for a second and then says she appreciates that I respect her perspective on this. I nod. We finish dinner. She goes to her desk and works for a while. I do the dishes and go to bed in the morning. I find out she posted about it that night, something about small linguistic shifts creating meaningful change inside domestic relationships. I don't read the whole thing, but I think about the word partner, not dramatically, not with any alarm, just turning it over, the way you turn a pebble in your hand. Partner is what you call someone you run a business with or someone you play doubles tennis with. It's functional. It describes a logistical arrangement. It's neutral in a way that is itself a choice. She said words have power. She said they carry expectations and reinforce structures. I heard her. I'm going to take her seriously, probably more seriously than she was expecting, but I'm not going to say that I'm going to be consistent and quiet about it. I think about what she said, though, that the word wife carries centuries of implication. that it shapes how people see the relationship from the outside, that it creates expectations. Neither person explicitly agreed to. All of that is true. And if it's true for wife, then the same logic applies to everything that word was holding up: the obligations, the financial assumptions, the built-in structure of what a husband provides and what a marriage protects. All of that came bundled with the label. You remove the label. You remove the bundle. That's not me being difficult. That's just following the reasoning to wherever it actually leads. She seems pleased that I didn't argue. I hear her on the phone with a friend a few days later saying, "My partner and I are doing this." And my partner thinks that it sounds like a press release, but it's her preference, and I'm not going to fight her on her own terms. She got what she asked for. That's the thing about asking clearly for something. You sometimes actually get it the week after. Nothing much changes, because I don't run into any situation where an introduction is needed at home. We just talk, first names, no labels. She reminds me once to use partner. If the context comes up, I say sure. She posts a follow-up piece about achieving alignment with your partner on language changes in the home. I don't read it. I'm thinking about the company dinner coming up every year. The company books the back room at a restaurant downtown, the whole team plus whoever people bring. The manager gives a speech. There's an open bar. I'd been planning to bring her still. I'm just thinking about how I'm going to introduce her, because she said words matter, and she's right. They absolutely do. The company dinner is at an Italian place with low lighting and good bread. We've done this event for years. It's familiar ground. She's been to 2 of these before, and she gets along with my coworkers. Fine in the car on the way over. She's in a good mood, telling me about a grant proposal she submitted at work. She sounds like herself when she talks about work stuff, focused and competent. We get there, grab drinks at the bar, start working the room the way you do at these things. One of my coworkers comes over first with his wife. He's been at the company longer than me. One of those genuinely easygoing people who never seems to have an agenda. He shakes my hand. His wife hugs my partner. They've met before. They have a rapport. Then a newer guy from the back-end team shows up with his girlfriend. I've never met the girlfriend. First time seeing her, she seems pleasant. We do the greeting thing, the handshakes and the smiles. I look at the girlfriend and I say, "This is my roommate." Just like that, completely calm, no build-up, no hesitation. Just, "This is my roommate." Said as naturally as giving someone's name. There's a pause. My coworker's head turns a few degrees. The girlfriend looks uncertain, but holds it together socially and says, "Oh, that's great. Do you two work in the same field?" I say no. She's in nonprofit communications. My partner has gone very still next to me. She answers a follow-up question. Someone asks her. She stays composed. She's not going to make a scene at my work event. My coworker fills in the conversational space the way he always does and moves things along. A few minutes later, she steers me toward the drinks table and says quietly that she wants to know what I think I'm doing. I say I'm not calling her my wife, because she said that word comes with too much historical and structural weight, and girlfriend is inaccurate because we're legally married, and partner sounds like a business arrangement, which she also said she finds reductive when it's applied to romantic relationships. So, roommate is the accurate option. We share a residence, we split domestic space. She says I know exactly what I'm doing, and I can drop the act. I say I'm being consistent with the framework she laid out. She gives me a look I haven't seen before. Not pure anger, more like the floor shifted and she's not sure where to put her weight. She goes back into the group. She's polite for the rest of the evening, socially present. Does the small talk, laughs at the right moments, but she stays near my coworker's wife, near familiar ground. On the drive home, she's quiet for a long stretch. The city goes by outside, and neither of us says anything for several minutes. Eventually, she says, I made her feel humiliated in front of people she has to see. Again, I say, I applied the reasoning she gave me. She says her reasoning wasn't designed to be used as a tool to embarrass her publicly. I say I wasn't trying to embarrass her. I was being precise about language the way she'd asked me to be. She says she knows exactly what I was doing. I say if partner feels too transactional and wife is off limits and girlfriend is inaccurate, she might want to clarify what she'd prefer, because I'm not going to guess and then be wrong. She doesn't answer. We get home. She goes to her office and closes the door behind her. I watch something on TV and fall asleep on the couch for a while. Eventually I go to bed. She comes in later. I'm mostly asleep. I hear her come in, but I don't move in the morning. She's up before me. She makes coffee and leaves a cup on the counter, which she does sometimes when things are normal between us. I stand in the kitchen and drink it. We talk about small things, what we need from the store, whether the building's front door is still sticking. She acts like yesterday was a regular day. I follow her lead. Neither of us brings it up. The blog goes quiet for a few days after that. She usually posts every couple of days at minimum. Sometimes more. The gap is noticeable. I think something got dislodged. End of the month comes around, and I've always been the one managing the household finances, paying everything, moving money between accounts, making sure the timing lines up. She's never had to think about it, and I never made it a thing because it wasn't a thing. I just handled it. This time, I make a spreadsheet: rent, divided down the middle, utilities averaged over the month, and split evenly groceries tracked across 4 weeks, and divided subscriptions, itemized and assigned. I print it and leave it on the kitchen counter before I leave for work. She comes home before I do that day. When I get back, the paper is on the counter and she's in the kitchen. She picks it up and asks what it is. I say partners, split costs equally. It keeps things clean and fair. I say we've been operating on an assumption that made sense when we were approaching things as a married couple with shared finances, but we're partners now. So the more equitable arrangement is individual contribution. She reads through the numbers. It's manageable for her. It's not going to hurt her financially, but it's more than she's been implicitly contributing. Up to this point, she puts the sheet down on the counter. She doesn't say anything. She pays her share at the end of the month via transfer. No comment, no discussion, doesn't bring it up the next day either. I think some part of her expected me to walk it back, to say I was just making a point, and let's go back to the old way. I don't walk it back. The blog stays quiet for a few more days. I think she believes I'm going to get bored of holding this line, that I'll drop it once I've made my point. I'm not making a point. I'm maintaining a system. I can do that indefinitely if the underlying logic is sound, and the logic is sound, because she established the logic sometime after the dinner and the spreadsheet. She starts talking about a trip. There is a place a few hours away she's wanted to visit. Some kind of workshop happening there that she and 2 friends are planning to attend. She mentions it, and I say that sounds like a good time. Then she says she's thinking of extending the trip by a few days and turning the tail end into something we do together. Sends me a link to a rental house on the water. Nice place. Deck overlooking the beach. I look at the link. I think about it for a day. Then I book a flight to visit a friend who moved across the country about 2 years ago. Same weekend, I mention it over dinner a couple nights later. She puts her fork down and says she thought we were talking about doing the coastal house together. I say I figured the first part was her thing with her friends, and I didn't want to crowd it. She says the last few days were supposed to be us. I say I must have misread that. Her message made it sound like the whole trip was planned around the workshop. Then I actually pick up my phone and find a post she published around 8 months ago. I read her a line from it, something she wrote about how healthy partnerships don't require constant synchronized schedules, and how space for independent experiences is an expression of trust rather than distance. I put my phone back down. She's looking at me. She doesn't say anything for a while. She goes on her trip with her friends. I fly across the country and visit my friend. It's a genuinely good trip. We hike, eat at good places, stay up late, talking about nothing and everything, the way you do with an old friend. I barely think about any of the home situation while I'm there. It's the most relaxed I've felt in a long time. My friend asks once if everything's okay at home. I say it's complicated. He doesn't push. I come back before she does. I clean the apartment and stock the fridge. Not as a message, just because it's my home, and I keep it a certain way. She gets back a day after me. I can tell from the first 5 minutes that the trip wasn't what she needed it to be. She's quieter than usual, a little flat. I ask how it was, and she says, "Good, I make dinner, we eat." She goes to sleep before 10. Over the following weeks, the apartment takes on a different quality. Not hostile, nothing dramatic, just neutral, the way a hotel room is neutral. We're functional. We're not rude to each other. We have normal conversations sometimes. We watch something together on the couch occasionally, but the temperature is lower, like someone turned it down 10 degrees, and we've both quietly decided not to acknowledge it. I think she keeps expecting me to break, to come back to her and say, "I'm sorry, I was being ridiculous. You're my wife, I don't do that." It's not stubbornness, exactly. I think she should actually experience the thing she asked for. She built the framework. She wrote the posts. She laid out the logic. She should have the chance to live inside it and see what it feels like with the ceiling. On one weekend, she goes to brunch with a group of her friends. She's gone most of the day. I work on a side project. Productive day. I barely notice the time she comes back in the late afternoon, and her eyes are a little red at the edges. I don't ask. I make tea and leave a cup on her desk and go back to what I was doing. She comes out an hour later and thanks me through something she let slip a couple days later. I piece together what happened at that brunch. She'd been venting to her friends about the dynamic at home, about how Kevin had become emotionally distant and cold. One of her friends said something. Honest said that what she was describing sounded like what she'd always said she wanted in a relationship. A partner who respects her independence, doesn't make her identity about his needs, doesn't lean on traditional marriage dynamics as the foundation. Apparently there was a silence after that. Apparently one of the other friends nodded. She doesn't tell me exactly what was said because she doesn't bring it up directly, but I can see the effect of it on her over the following days. She's quieter, less certain. She looks at me sometimes in a way that's harder to read than usual. Something got knocked loose at that table, and the logic she'd built her framework on started pulling in a direction she wasn't expecting if the framework works the way she described, and her partner is behaving exactly the way the framework suggests a healthy partner should behave. Then she can't use the framework to explain why she's unhappy. That's the part that got dislodged. I'm doing quiet research around this time, not dramatic. Not with any heat behind it, just reading, looking into what the legal process actually looks like in our state, what the filing timeline is, how assets get handled. I book an hour with a lawyer, a consultation, just to understand where things stand. Practically, the lawyer is, matter of fact, walks me through the process clearly. I take notes on my phone. I go home and I sit with it for a couple of weeks. I think about the ratio of good days to careful days over the last year. I think about how often I'm managing what I say versus just saying it. I think about the dinner conversations that turn into lectures about systemic patterns. I think about feeling like a recurring case study in someone else's content. I think about the wedding vows and how hers were about love without possession. And I thought that was her being poetic. I think I misread what she meant. She meant it practically. I think about what it would feel like to just live quietly, without the ambient low-level tension, without this monitoring, without the sense that every ordinary thing I do is being fed into a framework I didn't agree to and then evaluated. And I realize I've known the answer for a while. I've just been waiting to be certain enough to move. My mom calls one afternoon and says she's passing through the area on her way to visit my aunt. She wants to stop and have dinner. I say, of course, come over. I don't overthink it. I don't prep her. I just say, come. She shows up with a casserole dish covered in foil and a bottle of red wine she picked up at a gas station. She hugs me for a long time the way she always does, then turns and hugs my partner, calls her sweetheart. My partner has always found that a little too familiar, but she's never corrected it, and she doesn't. Now we open the wine, get the casserole in the oven, sit at the kitchen counter while it heats. My mom fills a room. Naturally, she asks about work, about the neighborhood, about whether I've been eating enough, which she asks me every single time, regardless of how I look. She's genuinely warm. She doesn't perform warmth. She just has it. Dinner comes together, and we sit at the table. At some point, my mom puts her hand on my partner's arm and asks how things are going for them as a couple. That particular kind of gentle leading question that has grandchildren somewhere at the end of it. My partner starts to answer. I say, "We're doing well as roommates," same tone I use for everything. No wind-up, no edge. Just we're doing well as roommates. My mom stops mid-reach for the bread. She looks at me and says, "We're married." What do I mean? Roommates. I say we are married, yes. But she prefers not to use the traditional labels because of what they imply historically. So, roommate is the accurate description for our arrangement. My mom looks at my partner. My partner is looking at the casserole. My mom says she's not sure. She understands. My partner says something about how language in relationships is more complicated than it looks from the outside. She says it in the tone she uses for the blog, measured and patient, the tone that's designed to educate someone who doesn't know better. Yet, my mom nods the way she nods when she's choosing graciousness over her actual response. She asks if everything is okay between us. Looking at my partner directly, my partner says yes, everything is fine, which is true in the way that something technically has to be either true or false. The rest of dinner, my mom stays warm but runs at a lower level. She talks about my aunt, about a road trip she's been planning, about a neighbor's health situation. She doesn't circle back to the relationship when she gets up to leave. She hugs me in the doorway and holds on for a second longer than usual. She says, "Call me soon," which, in her language, means I have things to say to you, and I will say them when she's not here. She hugs my partner on the way out, a degree less warmth than when she arrived, not cold, just less. The door closes. My partner stands in the front hallway for a moment, then walks to the bedroom. I run water in the sink and start on the dishes. I'm not feeling triumphant. I'm not feeling much of anything specific. I'm feeling the shape of a conclusion, which is a strange thing to feel about your own marriage. I stand at the sink for a while. I think about who she was at that birthday dinner years ago, loud and funny and full of opinions, in a way that felt like someone running at full speed. I think about the first year, when things were mostly good and easy. I think about how slow the shift was, how it happened in degrees so small there was never one moment I could point at and say that specific thing, that's where everything changed. It was accumulation, every conversation that turned into a referendum on something larger. Every time a small thing I did got folded into a pattern, she was documenting every moment. I felt like a variable in an ongoing study, every dinner where I measured what I was about to say before I said it. And then, one evening, she asked me to stop using a word. And something clarified. She said that word carries structural expectations. Okay, if the word doesn't apply, then the structure it points to doesn't apply. And if the structure doesn't apply, what's actually present here? Two people splitting bills in a neutral apartment. That's what's present here. I already have the paperwork from the lawyer consultation. I'd asked her to send over draft documents so I could review them and understand the process. They've been sitting in my work bag for about a week. I bring the bag home and take the envelope out. I set it on the kitchen counter. She comes in from the bedroom a few minutes later, sees it, asks what it is. I tell her to open it. She picks it up, slides out the papers, reads the first page. There's a specific silence that comes over a room when something real is happening. Not dramatic silence. Just the ordinary sounds of the building and the street suddenly becoming audible. She sets the papers down very slowly. She asks if I'm serious. I say yes. She says she can't believe this. Says she doesn't understand how I could do this without a conversation. I say I took her at her word. She said words have power. She said labels shape the structures people live inside. She said wife implies a hierarchy she doesn't accept. So I stopped thinking of her as my wife. And once I did that, I started looking at what was actually in front of me without that word doing any organizing work. And what I found was two people sharing an apartment who haven't really connected in months. Two people who manage each other more than they know each other. She says, I twisted everything she said and used it against her deliberately. She says she never intended any of this when she asked for a small language change. Her voice is getting louder. She says we can fix it. She says we should have been talking about all of this openly. She says there are options. I say I think we're past the point where an option changes what I already know. She asks how I can be this calm about it. I say because I've had time to sit with it. She says she never got that time, and she's not wrong. I say I know, and I'm sorry it landed like this. I mean it not performing remorse, genuinely sorry that the road ended here instead of somewhere else, just not willing to keep walking it, because I feel bad about where it goes. She asked me to wait a week before doing anything official. I say I've already been waiting longer than a week. I go to the closet and take out my overnight bag. I packed it 2 days ago when I decided today was going to be today. She watches me lift it out and something changes in her face. The abstraction became concrete. I tell her I'll stay at a friend's place while the practical details get sorted. I tell her she can stay in the apartment during that time. I'm not trying to put her out immediately. I tell her my lawyer will reach out to whoever she has on her side. She says she doesn't have a lawyer. I say she should get one. It'll make the process cleaner for both of us. She's standing in the bedroom doorway. She says she doesn't understand how we got here from where we started. I say she asked me to stop using a word, and I stopped using it. And it turned out the word had been doing a lot of structural work that neither of us had fully mapped. She says that's not fair, I say. I know a lot of things aren't. I open the front door, I leave no slam, no speech, just the click of the latch and then the hallway and the elevator and the front entrance and the street outside the building door closes behind me. And that's that I sit in my car for a few minutes, not processing dramatically. Not falling apart, just sitting with the engine off the street, is just a street. Someone's walking a dog down the block. A car goes by the evening is completely ordinary. Nothing in the world knows or cares what just happened in that apartment. It's kind of a relief. I start the car, I drive to my friend's place. It takes about 20 minutes, and I don't think about much during the drive. Just the road and the lights and the radio. On low, he opens the door, looks at me for about 1 second, and goes to get 2 beers without asking anything. We sit on his couch, and I tell him the short version. He listens without interrupting. He doesn't say he could see this coming. Even though I think he probably could, he doesn't editorialize at all, which is one of the reasons I've been friends with him for 15 years. We watch something forgettable on TV. I sleep on his couch the following morning. I wake up and notice something different. About the first few seconds, usually waking up involves a brief, unconscious inventory. What kind of morning is it going to be? What did I say recently that might need managing? What's the ambient tension level in the apartment that morning? There's none of that, just bad couch sleep and stale apartment air and the sound of his coffee maker running in the kitchen. I lie there for a minute and realize I feel fine, genuinely fine in a way that tells you something about how you were before. I find a sublet about a month later, 1 bedroom, nothing special. A little bare. I don't rush to fill it with things. It looks sparse for a while, and that's okay. I buy a decent coffee maker and a good pan, and that's about as much as I do. For the first month, everything else can wait. The main thing I notice is that I sleep through the night. I didn't fully realize until then how often I'd been waking up over the previous year. How often I'd been lying at 3 in the morning, running conversations through my head, checking whether something I'd said had been wrong somehow, rehearsing things I should have said differently. The sublet is quiet. I sleep like a person with nothing pressing on them. I go back to the gym properly for the first time in months. I cook things I actually want to eat instead of building meals around someone else's preferences. I leave things in the wrong place, and it doesn't matter. I watch whatever I want. I have a conversation with my mom, a long one. She listens and she doesn't say, "I told you so," because she's not that kind of person. She says she's sorry it ended the way it did, and she means it. She says she just hopes I'm okay. I say I'm more okay than I expected. She says good. We talk for another hour about other things. The divorce finalizes a few months after the paperwork goes in. No drama in the process. We're both functional adults. I sign the final documents on a Thursday after work. I go home, order takeout, watch a documentary about deep-sea fish. They're strange-looking things. Some of them have their own light source built into their bodies. Adapted over millions of years to total darkness, miles underwater. They didn't argue with the environment. They didn't ask it to be different. They just figured out what was actually there and built something that fit it. They're doing fine down there. I think about the version of me that showed up to that birthday dinner years ago. Not a bad version, just one that didn't know yet which questions to ask before committing to an answer. I don't regret trying. I regret not seeing clearly sooner what was in front of me. But I think most people need the full experience to know when something is finished. You can't know a door is closed until you've pushed on it enough times to be certain. I pushed, it was closed. Now, I know I hear eventually through someone we both knew that she posted about the end of the relationship. The piece is apparently about emotional unavailability in male partners, about how some men respond to a woman's autonomy by withdrawing and weaponizing passivity as a form of control. Here it performed well for her. Her numbers go up. I think she'll be okay. She has her audience. She has her framework. She has a narrative that fits the arc. She was already building. She was always better at packaging things than I was. No anger about it. There's genuinely no heat left in any of this. For me, I think about something a friend told me once. He said the worst thing about a bad relationship isn't the ending. It's looking back and realizing how long before the ending you were already living like it was over, just without anyone saying it out loud. Yet, I think he was right about that. She said words have meaning. She was right. Wife meant I was her husband. And with that came a structure. We were both inside. Partner meant I was her roommate, and with that came a different structure. Roommates maintain their own lives and split what they owe each other and don't make permanent claims. I just took her at her word, treated the arrangement as what she said it was. And when you do that, honestly, when you actually follow the logic wherever it leads without stopping halfway, because it's getting uncomfortable, you end up exactly where I ended up, in a quiet apartment that belongs only to me, sleeping through the night, nobody's case study, just a person living his life, which turns out to be enough, more than enough, actually. That's the whole story.